Video up. There we go. You turned all your videos off just to mess with me. Cool.
No, we didn't.
Right.
You froze,
Hello
mate. You
and
froze.
welcome to the Youth Work State of Mind podcast. This is the podcast that hopes to encourage and equip.
Well, I've just messaged him. His signal's in and out. He's probably in full flow somewhere. So we'll give this. Yeah, he's gone. He's gone. He's come. I'm now host. You all right, mate?
Hey.
You keep dropping in and out.
Oh
Keep
no.
dropping in and out. Sorry, bro.
This is not good.
So we've all sat here awkwardly, just waiting for you seconds, live on the internet.
I sat here really relaxed, not awkwardly. I'm just, it's fine.
Right. Hopefully we're still live.
We are still live and watching us currently.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, how you doing, Ben?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. Do you want to explain what we're doing here? Because I think we cut out in the middle of your lovely spiel.
Right. Okay. Well, let's do that again then. Hello, welcome to the Youth Work State of Mind podcast. It's the podcast that helps to encourage and equip anyone who's working with young people in a ministry context. And as ever, I'm joined by Ben, the Diocesan Youth Advisor for Blackburn Diocese. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. We're getting over some technical gremlins, but we're doing all right.
Yes. Well, that is the beauty of live internet work, isn't it? So yeah, no, I'm doing well, mate. I'm doing well. Settling in. It's quite fun to be back.
It is, yes. It is fun to be back. Over the next hour, we're going to be discussing today's question, which is, how do we build a great team of youth leaders? Not just a team, a great team of youth leaders, because that's what we're doing. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, please feel free to get involved with the discussion by writing some questions or any comments that you have down below. And we will go through any questions or comments at the end of the podcast today. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, but you want to join in with future live versions because you didn't know it was live, then make sure you follow us on Instagram at YouthWork State of Mind, all one word, to get notified of future podcasts, so you can join with us live. All the information for this is going to be in the show's description as well, in whichever podcast app you're using. But before we get on to our topic today, we need to introduce the people who are going to be tackling this question with Ben and I. So first up, we have our first return guest on the Youth Work State of Mind podcast, Susie. Hello.
Good morning. Very nice to see you all back online.
Wonderful.
Yeah, very cool.
Do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself? And then could you please answer this question?
Yeah.
If you were walking out to a boxing ring for a fight, what would your walk-on music be?
That's such a great question. I'm going to try and think of an answer while I introduce myself. So I'm Susie. I live in Chorley, and I'm youth officer for the Diocese of Blackburn. Currently also acting assistant director in the education team with another.
I think
super
you just
legend.
said Blackburn.
I did, didn't I? I meant to say Manchester. Sorry. Sorry. Acting assistant director of the Board of Education in Manchester Diocese. I've been here a long time. I should know that by now. So that's me. I have a dog. I love stationery, and it's very nice to be here. And answer to your question, I think it would be a mashup. I mean, the idea of coming out into a boxing match is quite terrifying for me in the first place, because I come out with a sense of foreboding that I'm going to lose. But I think it would be a mashup. I'd come out to kind of the strains of something classical, like maybe Vivaldi's Four Seasons, maybe Autumn. And then it would suddenly turn into Ant and Dec's Let's Get Ready to Rumble, I think. Just to give people like a air of like, oh, maybe she's really cool and a very classy boxer. And then it would just be, let's get ready to rumble. That's probably what it would be.
Nice. I like this. This is a good mashup. I'm here for that. Brilliant. Our second guest is Graeme, and the same for you, please. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and if what your walk-on music would be if you were walking out for a boxing fight?
Hi, yeah, good morning, everybody. So I'm Graeme. I'm the youth lead on the Children, Young People and Families team for the Diocese of Leeds. I mean, or maybe I should go for Blackburn too. I don't know.
Blackburn, yes.
Yeah, it's all Blackburn. Whoop, whoop, Blackburn.
It's just the best place. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Only because you and Dave are there. I juggle that with a couple of part-time youth work jobs. I'm not very good at taking the idea of walkout music very seriously. Because you want your intense stuff, but I think I'd sort of just go for maybe something like a Runaway by The Cause, just have something to mess with my opposition's mind a little bit, and just leave them a little bit ambiguous as to what my intentions are. So
Love it.
yeah.
I love it. Fantastic suggestions. Right. We've reached the part of the show. You can kind of tell we kind of like to have a little bit of fun on this show, and this time we are going to be bringing back one of our fun features from last series, which is Bible characters where we ask our guests to suggest Bible characters that would fit into certain circumstances. This time, we'd like our guests to suggest Bible characters as members of a youth team. Who from the Bible would be good, or maybe not so good? Don't know what you're suggesting on a youth team. And if you're watching us, if you're watching along with us live, please feel free to put your comments and your suggestions in the comments as well. That'd be great. Shall we start with Graeme?
I start for 10. I mean, every youth team could do with that lad with the loaves and fishes. The bit where you kind of go, everyone's like, oh, has anyone, we've not brought like the crucial bit of equipment. And then there's your leader who kind of like, so, oh yeah, no, it's okay. Like I've got a torque wrench in my boot, or, like, I've got 3 spare reels of duct tape. I've got a badge making machine, and you're just like, oh, someone's come equipped for today. So, I think, I mean, we don't know their name, but that child, I think that's the sort of youth leader they'd be.
Love that.
Nice. Susie, who are you going for?
Oh, well, I had 3. So, am I allowed to say 3? My similar to Graeme, great thoughts from Graeme. I love that one. Is Noah, because Noah was like super practical and actually had to build an ark on his own. And so sometimes I think to have a Noah on your team would be awesome. A bit risk taking, but obviously would have a risk assessment for any advanced kind of boat building that might go on in a youth group. But I think I always love in a team someone who is super practical and can come up with a solution for kind of practical issues that everyone else is terrified and it's all going to go pear-shaped, and this person goes, but why don't we do this? And I love that, and I think Noah would be that kind of youth leader on the team.
Would you need to be like a little bit cautious for like the sort of end of term social amongst the leaders as to kind of what Noah got up to?
Why? What are you suggesting, Graeme?
I'm just there's that the whole awkward episode kind of with Noah getting drunk. There
is that. Yeah.
So I mean that's the bit where your youth leader's kind of like, right, let's get a blanket and like.
Well, hopefully he will have had some really good training around best practice before he started to avoid those moments. Genius. I quite like. I was also thinking, wouldn't the angel Gabriel make a great youth leader? Like, just boom, there they are, fantastic. But really great communication skills, really good. Looks amazing, but also not amazing as in looks amazing because of the way they arrive into kind of situations, but also really effective communicator and helping to people understand maybe things that may be a little complicated, but with real clarity. So, yeah, I'd love an Angel Gabriel as well on the team. I've got one more, but I don't want to hog it. So, Graeme, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, Dave, do you want to? I mean, I can go again, but
seeing as Dave's frozen looking upwards, this bodes really well. I'll dive in and say you kind of always want an Esther on your team because she's risen to this position for such a time as this. So even if it's someone that is just there in the wings, that's an emergency leader, that person that you can ring up and go, we've got no one. We've got no one else. Would you step in? And she would be like, I'm there without fail. I'm there. So yeah, there you go. The joy that is. I think that would probably be the way. That's someone I think who would be good to have on team. I guess King David wouldn't be bad either. So King David, just I mean, again, dubious in parts of his life, but generally someone that can lead worship, can herd sheep. So herding young people is always helpful, particularly if you're running a youth club. So yeah, I think he's probably.
Do you guys know jail? Not jail, prison, like Jael, Jael, like Cicera, judges. Jael like knocks a tent peg through the temple of is it Cicera? Oh, crumbs. And I just think that that would be a leader you'd want to be really cautious about if you're going on a camping residential. You're just like, I'll take that mallet, thank you very much.
Yeah, 100%.
I was on a serious point. I was this morning. I was reading I think it was a lectionary passage for this morning. About Naaman, and I love the story of Naaman. There's so much interesting bits in that. But Naaman's servants or slaves who advisors when he's told that the way to get rid of his leprosy is to go bathe in the river, and he's like, what? I've come all this way to bathe in a river. It's like we've got rivers back home. Could have done it there. And it's his servants are like, just saying, take it or leave it. But if it had been a hard thing, you would have done it. So if it's an easy thing, why not give it a go? And I think in every youth team, it's really helpful to have that person who's able just to kind of chip in on your ear and say, just maybe have a think about this, and you go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, good shout.
I love that. My other one was Ruth. I'm always inspired by her, extraordinary woman, and I just think there's something wonderfully loyal about her. And much like you were saying, Ben, sometimes things get complicated, and people might be poorly, and but there's so much more to being loyal, particularly to young people. I think young people need loyal people around them, and she showed a huge amount of love and care to like the people around her, and she was a real grafter as well. She really worked hard, and often will have probably, obviously I didn't know her personally, but I can imagine she's the kind of person who would have used her initiative and just done the jobs that she could see that needed doing around her, rather than waiting to be asked and going, ta-da, look at me, I'm so helpful. Just a real humble, loyal, loving, inspiring woman. She'd be a great role model for young women, I think, as well, and young men as well.
Brilliant. All fantastic suggestions. Love them.
Was there a right answer? Have we like,
Jesus.
There was no standard set correct answer. I think you all did fantastic. Loved it. I did freeze out for some of it.
Oh.
Some of it.
And as if by magic.
And as if by magic, he freezes out again. So, I feel like he's going to move us on at this point. So, so today we're tackling this question of how do we build a great team of youth leaders? For a lot of us, youth work, youth ministry, and especially our teams have looked like they've been massively hit by COVID, by lockdowns, by all the changes with that. And so we've seen groups struggling to get back up and running. Churches have struggled with volunteers across the board. So how do we start a team? How do we discern who to bring into that? Can we be that picky? And how do we do so in a way that creates stability for the future? Hopefully not by the end of this episode, you'll be a little bit closer to the answers you need. Hopefully by the end of this episode, when you're kind of blind reading something, hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll be a little closer to the answers that you need for your context. So we're hopefully in a place where this all kind of rolls together beautifully. But let's start off with probably a question that feels a little bit more left of field. Maybe we're kind of leaning into something, but how can our leaders out there be the best leader that we can be? What are the qualities of the best leader that we can be?
Good question.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
I think one of the qualities is to be a good listener. I think over the years that I've done youth work, I wish I'd listened more, and because there's a lot of really important stuff that people are saying, and I think we've really lost, as in general, the ability to listen deeply and well, and that takes on many forms. I think most importantly, listening to God, making space to hear His voice, and what He's asking us to do individually, and corporately as a youth group or as a church. I think that's so important. I think listening to our team, to each other, is really important. Listening to the bigger picture, what's going on, is really key. But 100%, I think for me, one of the most important things for us to do is listen to our young people. I don't think we do that enough. And I often say this phrase, and Graeme's probably heard me say this 6 million times, so I apologise, is that we're so quick to do youth work to young people and not with young people. And if we do youth work with young people, we give masses more space for their voices to be heard. And they've got so much to say and so much wisdom. For me, and I've learnt this because I'm a chatterbox, that actually stopping and listening has been critical. And where there's been pivotal big decisions that have needed making, or you've got yourself stuck in a rut, or kind of feeling a bit kind of broken by what's going on around, a bit discouraged, just stopping and hearing the voice of God, but also listening to the wise people around you and hearing what young people are saying as well. So yeah, I would go listener. Be good at listening.
Massively so.
Thank you for listening.
It's all right. Well, apologies. I had a moment where I suddenly went,
You weren't listening. Okay, thanks.
Well, Dave was messaging me going, "Is this all fallen to bits?"
Fine,
And
don't
I'm
worry.
like, "No, we're still going." So
so
apologies. Apologies if I was staring down there.
That's okay.
So yeah, Graeme, what do you throw in the mix, mate? How do we be the best leaders? How can we be the best leaders we can be? Apart from listening and me exhibiting exactly how not to do that. But there you go.
Well, I was struggling because I keep singing that Pokemon theme to myself. I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. Does that now have copyright implications?
Possibly does. Depends on how well you sang it. Actually.
Yeah, I was about to say, if I sang it really badly, is that okay? If I sang it really bad. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in a similar vein to listening. I mean, I think being open to learning. There's a Sherlock Holmes / Conan Doyle quotation that I was quite like of education never ceases, Watson. It's a series of lessons with the greatest for the last. And I just, that I have a mentality of always learning, always gleaning, like new understanding, and not in the sense of like there must be an intensive training regime. Like CPD is good, but at the same time, you don't want people to feel like they're constantly having somebody chasing them. Like one of my employers is chasing me with emails because I've not done my GDPR training. But yeah, so I think having that willingness to keep learning, keep being open, learning from other people, learning from young people, learning from your mistakes. I've been on a lowland leader training course this weekend, and it's really interesting hearing the instructors for that talk about the importance of learning from your mistakes. Yeah, and I think just not assuming that you've got it all sorted. And that's really dangerous to do in any kind of environment. But in youth work, going, well, young people are the same, and I've been doing youth work for the last 10 years, and young people haven't changed in the last 10 years. I'm like, well, I mean, there's a whole question of kind of, whether society's changed or whether the context changed or whatever, but also like you're not working necessarily with the same, if you are working with the same young person, great, although they also will have changed. But if you're working with different young people, then you've got to start that journey with each young person kind of, at the beginning. You can't just assume you get to skip to sort of halfway through the book. So I think I've made that point several thousand times over. Sorry for a slight waffle there, but keep learning.
Well, it is, but it's transient though, isn't it? So like we have often said and often say to people, like, you might have a 10-year vision for your youth ministry, or like a 400-year, like wherever this is going, sort of a long time. But actually reality is that will move forward and back depending on the young people, because it's transient the entire time we're in it. And I think that is kind of part of what we're talking about is leaders that can adapt, that are that I think one of the biggest things for me, so I totally, absolutely, someone who's a listener, someone who's a learner, but someone who's servant hearted. And that sounds really daft, but I've been, I don't know, I mean, I've worked with some incredible like leaders that will volunteer for anything and everything. And then there's others that sort of turn their nose up at you, that almost say, no, I didn't sign up to do that. I signed up for the sort of the glamorous bits, like leading stuff and this, that, and the other. I think it takes someone who's happy to stack chairs at the beginning, to use that age-old adage, happy to stack chairs to set up a building, as well as be the person that, stands at the front and starts the thing, or does the Bible study, or whatever it is that your youth group looks like. And I think that's the balance, everyone, isn't there? There's like, actually, if we're in there, we're in it together, and actually therefore we all play a part, and everyone, and there are different roles, and we possibly will touch on this later, but there's different roles in kind of leadership within youth leadership. Hey, guess who's back? Woo! Dave's connecting apparently. So, but there's different roles, and whilst that might well be absolutely the right thing, and absolutely sort of right in terms of we've got different roles, but everyone mucking in together. It means if I'm the first one to turn up and I've got to lead something, but someone else is delayed, I'll just get on and clear chairs. I'll clean up. I'll muck in. If a young person's ill, then we all kind of muck in. And I think there's something really in that, isn't there? So actually, I think, yeah. So yeah, how can we be the best leader? Anything else to throw in the mix? Is there any other qualities you'd throw in there?
I think it's really interesting listening to you say that, Ben, because I think they're all closely related. I was thinking about, sometimes you can draw up sort of what qualities you'd like in a leader, and it's it's good to recognize, to identify some good attributes to have or to work towards, and I think that latter part is key, because you can go, well, I'm not super organized, or I'm not like really fun and charismatic up front, or I'm really bad at counting 10p's in the tuck shop or something. Like it can be really easy to identify lots of stuff. You go, well, I've not got that, and it's not about having it. It's about being and partly kind of being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, but also kind of being open to that journey, and that journey then that happens because you listen to people, because you learn, because you are servant-hearted, and so all of those three that we've named like are really fundamental, because you don't have to be it. You're on a journey, and like it'll probably shift, and or you'll go beyond it to become a superhuman. I don't know. So I think that aptitude, is that the right word? Certainly that attitude, I think is really key. And so, yeah, it's interesting that that thread sort of stitches together those 3 responses from us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's a lovely way to bring that to a close. That little section of our conversation, beautifully done. It's like we had to manage without our host for a little bit, and we all turns. That's beautiful.
Yes, I did drop out for a bit.
You did. It's all right. We missed you, but we cracked on. We didn't just sit here awkwardly. Do you want to ask us our second question, Dave?
Yes, I will do. Second question: how do we gather a volunteer team?
In a big truck. Scoop them off the street.
Are you are you condoning the?
No, not at all. Just being funny. Not at all. Just thought I'd throw that in for lols. No. I think for me, and we've had this conversation a couple of times before, and it may well crop up again. I think we need to be really clear that that when we're looking for a team, I really advocate the kind of one-on-one approach. I like to have individual conversations with people, because if we know them, we recognise their giftings and their talents and their skills and their quirks, which we love. And they may never have even thought about doing youth work before, because they probably don't think they're cool enough to be it. So we just have to get rid of all those kind of youth leader stereotypes. You've got to be hip, cool and trendy, wear a super dry hoodie and know all the tunes. But for me, some of the ways in which I've brought volunteer teams together have been around individual conversations where people have been able to say, do you really think I could do this? And actually, yes. And I give people opportunity to do like taster sessions. But also is creating those opportunities for people to come and just give it a try. I'm not saying that we do that at the cost of our young people. We do that in a really well managed way, obviously with all the appropriate checks in place, etc., etc. But for some people, I remember years ago when I was running a youth group in a church I worked for, a mum came along and said, I'm happy to help out with the tuck shop. A year later, she was like involved so deeply in the youth work because she suddenly realized, I can do this. And that's, I think, a really clear message that we want to be saying is to people is that, get rid of the stereotypes, and that sets people free to see what they can bring. And if they love young people appropriately, and if they want the best for them, spiritually, mentally, physically, or then that for me is brilliant, and the rest is trainable, I think. So yeah, I would create opportunities for those individual conversations. But there is a debate about whether you go up the front of church and say, we really need youth leaders. If you take the small crying children with you, yeah, maybe that will work, but that's emotional blackmail, and I can't endorse that, I'm afraid.
Susie Mapledoram does not endorse this message.
Yeah.
I mean, Susie, could you turn that into one of those Christmas adverts you get with
possibly, yes,
sort of black and white?
I know what. Yes,
of a sort of a child round a table in a hall, kind of Salvation Army.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Will you come and help change this child's life by volunteering 7:30 to 9:30 every Friday?
I love that.
I have to admit, I'm with Susie. I'm a big endorser of the wonderful world of like calling out someone's best and calling out kind of the gifting you see in them. And I think there is something of that. You have to be obviously careful with it, that you know the people. But I think there's definitely something of starting people on that journey. Graeme talked about it earlier. That is like, so we often talk about sort of there being helpers, assistants, and leaders within sort of youth group settings, which means that you might invite someone in as a helper and say, would you come, exactly that example of, would you come and lead a tuck shop? Would you help make this? Would you come and do this? We know you're all out, like your name's on the rota. You're allowed to be in the kitchen, if your church is only let certain people in. But so that person can do that. But then when they get alongside young people, they start to care about them and love them more. And therefore then they sort of say, well, can I come and help with a game, or can I sit in the session and can I get alongside them? And before you know it, you've seen them both grow in their faith and in their confidence and in their like sort of vision and ownership of this group of young people, and just care for them, love them, and want to see them grow. And I think so I think there is something of that, and equally being able to sit on the edge of stuff and sort of say, so on the edge of church, and see who are the people that naturally connect with young people is a great starting point. Because actually, if you see that there's, I mean, the age-old adage that, and maybe it's me that came up with this. I don't think it is me that came up with it, but because I've heard it quoted elsewhere. But young people and children will gravitate to the oldest person in the room that gives them attention. So if you take that into a church context, you sit there and see who are the older people that young people naturally gravitate to. Who are the people that actually they get alongside? Who are they naturally connecting with and doing life with? And are they the right people? And then you have to ask the question, are they right people to be sat in our youth groups, leading our youth groups? And if they're not, then it's saying, what's like, should they be? And actually, if they got some life experience, if they got a love for God that can be infused into these young people, and how does that pass on? And I think there's kind of, it's that discernment process that sometimes takes quite a long time, but I think it's valuable. And we might disagree slightly on the stand at front of church, because I think it sadly communicates a bit of desperation, personally speaking. And I think that's what worries me, is stands up and goes, ooh, we just need someone, please, someone, anyone will do, anyone with a heartbeat, come and just sit in with our young people. Like, it just communicates the wrong thing. We don't do that for church leaders. And when we're asking people to lead and disciple and pastor our children and our young people, then we need to be specific about it. But I have a feeling someone might disagree with that in the room. So,
go Graeme.
Dave. I mean, I think it's not that I disagree. I think it's both, and my because I get the desperation thing, but I think you can equally do that in a one-to-one conversation. Like, oh, Siobhan, please, will you help us? Like, and in a sense, that's even more emotionally blackmailing than dragging the children up the front, because Siobhan's now backed into a corner with a teacup and there's nothing she can do. Like, I think having a direct conversation with somebody is good, because it's specific, it's targeted. You've recognized that individual, so it's complementary. It gives them opportunity to ask questions. But I think you also need to be really self-aware when you're approaching people, that you don't end up always approaching the same sort of person. You're like, oh, look, there's a white middle-class male and like me, and I think they would be great. It'd be great to have them as my friend on this team. I mean, on this team as my friend. And you know, and I mean, that's true in lots of ways. So that doesn't negate that as a route. It's just something you need to be aware of. But then also, how do people find out that helping with youth work is a possibility in your church? Because if the way that always happens is by personal invitation, I'm sure we've all come across contexts where routes into positions are closed, where it's always about like knowing the right person. And so I think standing up front and saying, like, there is an opportunity for people to be involved, you have to be careful about how you pitch it, so you don't just sound like you're doing a desperate plea. But it makes people aware. So even though I think it will be less effective as a mechanism, I think it's worthwhile, because it makes people aware that this is a possibility. It also reminds the church that the youth work exists. And so it may be that, you know, if you've got a quick notice slot and you're doing a plug, and then you can close that with like, hey, can we all pray for the young people in our church? And then and you've helped kind of a church be mindful that there are young people that are part of this community too, which is why I think I'm quite happy to acknowledge I think it's less effective, but I don't think it's less valuable, if that makes sense.
That's really wise, Graeme. I think, and now I'm always, it's why it's important to listen, because you can't always think you've got it nailed, because I think there's some real wisdom in that. in keeping the profile of our ministry amongst children and young people in our churches up on the agenda. And I wonder if there's something in that as well, what we used to do when we were looking for new youth leaders. And that's a real issue, I think, across the church at the moment, particularly as some churches are coming back, continuing to return back to face. Some churches are restarting their youth work with a much more depleted voluntary team. I think there's something powerful about that upfront conversation that's about what we can offer them as well. It's not just that one-way thing of saying, this is what we want you to do for us. And this may well seep into another question, so I won't say too much. But actually, I think it's a two-way thing. If we're asking people to be part of this amazing group of young people, what are we also offering them as well? Not as a kind of, if you come and do this, we'll give you 16 milky tray, delicious chocolate boxes every week. But actually, I think there are some really practical and generous things that we can do for our volunteer teams that say, actually, we want to continue to enable you to grow through this opportunity for ministry as well. So, yeah, thank you, Graeme. Wise as ever.
No, I mean, but I think, it's all, there's lots of wisdom. I want to pick up on something that Ben was saying about, having somebody there and they can, might start off helping and then kind of really get to feel for the young people. And they also might not. One model in terms of gathering a volunteer is to sort of invite somebody to come down and see what's going on. You need to make sure that you do that in a safe way. And you also want to make sure you're not affecting your group dynamic so much. If you sort of, you've got your youth group of like 6 young people, and you're like, hey, we've brought 3 leaders down to watch this evening. They're just going to sit in the corner and stare. But if you have somebody down alongside stuff, then you get they get an opportunity to sort of see what it is you do and sort of meet some young people. But you also get an opportunity to see what it is they do and how they are with young people. And it may be that off the back of that, they decide or you decide that actually this isn't such a good fit. And therefore it's really important before you go into that they're aware this is sort of like a little bit of a trial thing. You don't want them to go down, they go, I loved it, and you go, no. And be like really hurtful. So like it's important that that's a really overt process, but without it also being really serious like a trial. But yeah, I think it's really helpful to kind of help get people that opportunity to kind of work out maybe this isn't for them, because I want to be really careful how I say this, is in a sense, because I don't want to give the impression that I have any disregard for volunteers, because the church's youth ministry is entirely reliant on volunteers, and in a very good way, because volunteers bring huge amounts of life and reality into youth ministry. And I imagine that all our involvement started out on a voluntary basis. Well, maybe Susie got paid from the cradle.
No.
But
Could you imagine?
But, you don't want a bad volunteer. And that's not saying that volunteers can't develop, can't go on journeys or anything like that. But if you sign somebody up kind of without sort of doing any thorough checks or anything, follow safer recruitment, please do. Church of England safe recruitment. But you don't do any kind of like, hey, get a feel for this. You don't have a feel for this individual, and you have somebody in and they're awful, and then you've got this whole thing of like, how do I now like get this person out, and not because you hate them, but you just really, your gifting isn't in this place, this is a bad fit. So I think having the opportunity to kind of get a moment to go, yes, this person is awesome, but also maybe this isn't the right ministry.
But don't you feel like at times we can feel like we're so short of leaders, and I'm not saying this is right, that sometimes we stick with a bad fit because actually we think, oh, pants, we've got to fill a rota, or we've not got enough people to make this run. And I think that is a danger, isn't it? And so no, that was very wise. Thank you. That's incredible to sort of put in the conversation. I think there is something I would say, like, and I agree with everything. Thank you for your wisdom on the standing at the front of church, like that priority thing. You miss it sometimes, and I think sometimes we kind of spend a lot of time kind of going, oh, just it's all invitation. the thing I would always say with the invitation stuff, and this feeds into what Graeme says, is I always have the conversation, then say I'll check in with you later. Like always come back to someone, let them contemplate it, let them pray about it, let them reflect on it. Don't.
Well, for about 7 minutes. Do you give them
about
at least
7 minutes?
7 minutes?
What you don't want is that situation where you pin someone in a corner with a teacup, kind of going, you know, you need to say yes. It's actually saying, if you're going to discern this, we need you to discern this really well, and I think that's important, isn't it?
And sometimes it may be something that they really want to do, but family life and work life and other kind of commitments get in the way. But if it means they can give maybe once a fortnight or once a month, then you know, that's what I think that's worth exploring. I think often we lay it out in such a way that it's like, right, you're never going to have another social life again, because every Friday night you're going to be down the youth centre. And if that's, you know, that's for some people, that's, you know, that's works for them, but for others maybe less regularly. And actually we've done that in the past, where we've created rotas for the younger age range. And that's worked really well for people, because they know, you know, oh, I'm on this week, but I'm not on that week. And the young people begin to get, you know, oh yeah, well, she'll be here next week, or he'll be here next week as well. So I think there's an opportunity to explore that and say, if this is something you want to do, but there are other factors that, you know, we can maybe work with to enable you to do this, then yeah, I think it's worth those conversations, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think like laying out expectation within the midst of that is always really handy. Like I know churches that write job descriptions for their volunteers, just so that they can put it in someone's hand and go, take this away, have a look at it, so you know what's involved. And so, and I mean, someone once said this to me, and I don't think this is necessarily the most accurate thing, but it's actually easier to ask someone for 20 hours of their week than 2 hours of their week, because 20 hours they realise is a commitment, and they've got to work out how that fits. Whereas 2 hours, you'll always think, I can fit that in. And I think, does that make sense? And that sounds really weird.
Yeah, I think that just describes my life.
Yeah, and I think it probably does for quite a lot of us. But I think to say to someone, can you do 2 hours in a week? They think, yeah, of course I can. I can just show up and do this. Whereas we all know that actually in reality, what we're hoping from youth is they're praying for young people, they're involved in planning potentially, that they're thinking this through, that they're doing this safely, that it's not just bowl in and make it up as we go along. And therefore actually that's more time, isn't it, depending on the role. I think I'm really conscious of time with this, and Dave might be about to flag this to me. The one thing that I'm a massive advocate of for our churches, that we, if we can, that and I nicked this from Birmingham Diocese, but everyone's a youth worker, everyone's a youth leader, is something they came up with. So everyone in your church can pray for young people, and there's something of a culture of praying for your young people, and actually therefore you engage everyone with praying. There's something of therefore encouraging people to think positively and speak positively of young people, and being champions, so championing youth workers. And then that slightly smaller group, or probably quite smaller group, is you're doing youth workers. And so there's this kind of aspect of actually seeing the whole church as part of your youth team, but actually that they have different roles within it. And one of the first things that we say to a lot of churches that are saying, well, how do we start? We say, start praying. Get your church praying for young people. You've not got anything running. So if you're totally from ground zero, even if you've got no young people, pray for them. Because you can have a ministry to young people without any young people if you're praying for them. Because you're praying for their school, where they are, the kids you see at bus stops. Be active in that, and it starts the journey. And I think sometimes it's one of those that can be sort of feels like a very long termism, but actually if we start praying, then we shift that.
We've cornered the people in the room with a teacup, and we've managed to get them on the team. We've done an appeal at the front of the church, and anyone, and you've got a team now. How do we, as leaders, bring out the best of everyone on that team? Because they're all going to be from different backgrounds. They're all going to maybe have different time commitments and pressures in their own life.
I'm going to pick up on just something Ben was talking about in terms of role description stuff. That's really useful when you're recruiting somebody, but that's also really valuable for getting the best out of people, is people having an understanding of what their job's about. I was saying to some people a couple of weeks ago that, you know, like few things can cause unnecessary friction, like somebody being perennially late because they think this is the time that they're going to turn up, and somebody like just getting really more and more frustrated and grumpy and angry because actually the time they think they should be there is another time, and so then you kind of end up with like situations like that are totally avoidable just with some clear communication. Just with some clear communication. I was there. Organizations hire people to work on comms, but like, yeah, so I think people understanding what their role involves, and so then, yeah, having a clear understanding of that will help them.
You've just touched on it, Graeme. I think communication, working out the best way to communicate with your team really quickly. So whether that looks like a WhatsApp group or like another chat like something else that you can kind of have weak team. I don't know. But,
Pigeons.
Pigeon, absolutely. Does email work for 1 week, like one team? Maybe it doesn't work for another. Like, I don't know. But finding out what the best way is to communicate, which means that if someone is ill, you're not turning up that time, but you find out at the beginning of the day when they've phoned in sick to work, when they're not, and you're saying, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to be there tonight," but you're not. They're not trying to wait to ring you or you to read an email or the vicar to read an email before they ring you. Kind of. So it's not this kind of cascade. It can happen sort of there and then. Equally, it allows you to communicate about sort of how each other are going on, build relationship. I guess is really key. And I think that's part of it, isn't it? It's, I guess, one of the big things for me is vision in youth ministry, and it's like if people don't know what the vision is on the team, they don't know what they're going after, and therefore when they know what they're going after, they own it and they feel like they belong. There's that whole, and actually people feeling like they're part of this team. They're not just a number that is needed. That they feel that you invest in that team with time, with energy. We talked about chocolate earlier, and it may not be that you kind of give gifts every week, but actually in some way show appreciation to people. And I think manners is a huge thing in youth ministry. Daft it sounds, you say please and you thank people when they've done something. I think that's huge, just for people feeling like they're appreciated, because people always like and that sounds really weird to get the best out of people, but the best out of everyone. Actually, there's some general rules that says, like, how do I get you at your best? Generally speaking, people, if you're polite to people, they go, "Oh, fab! I'm really," and you appreciate people and honour them and thank them for stuff. Then they're more likely to actually next time round be a bit more forthcoming. But anyway, that's not me being kind of manipulative. That, I guess that's just me saying, I think there's some huge value in that, but.
There's a brilliant training course that some colleagues of ours wrote some years ago now called The Key. The Key. And it's brilliant. I've used it a lot. I love it for lots of reasons, but one of the reasons is there's not a single PowerPoint slide in sight. It's a very conversational, discursive kind of training around a table. And one of the bits that I love about this course is that one of the first things that the group is asked to do, and that's to go through a list of 10 kind of values that you might have as an individual, and they really differ between like a real strong focus on being communicating the gospel and discipleship, to social action, to having a real heart for young people who are on the kind of periphery of the youth group, who might hang out outside but don't really want to come in. And it's a whole list of different kind of values that you might have as individuals. And what the training does, it asks everyone to do that individually and not write what they think the vicar would want them to write or what they think their youth leader might want them to write, but actually what is important to you. And what I love about that is that different people have different scores for different things. You rate it 1 to 10. And every time I've done it, different people will say, "Oh yeah, that was in my top 3," or "that was in my bottom 3. That was in the middle." And sometimes people are like, "But I didn't put the thing about discipleship at number 1. Should I have done that?" When actually for other people, that's really important. And for me, that's been pivotal to teams working well together because they recognize the individual and their values and the things that really ignite them, and actually when they're then released into that area of passion within the youth work, it just thrives. I remember one training event, this woman said, I just want to hang out with the kids outside, and that's what she did, and she was massively effective there. And so I think being able to recognize each individual for their own individuality and uniqueness and what they bring, but also what's meaningful for them, and how we tease that out, so that they can bring all, who they are to ministry. We talk about authenticity in youth work all the time. It's a bit of a kind of slang word, isn't it? But it's so important. And if we can encourage people in what makes their heart beat fast, then I think that can be a really massive way of getting the best out of your team, recognizing the individuality, but the corporateness of that team, of bringing those individuals together.
That surely feeds into some of that recruitment stuff as well, though, doesn't it? And Graeme said it before, like, we don't want to just be recruiting people that look like us, have the same skill set as us, and it sounds daft. You can have like a team full of people that can stand at the front and do what someone else can do, and that's great to have, but actually you need the people that can get alongside young people in the choir and can stand outside and get alongside, and it's almost it's knowing that those are qualities that you need, not just the value on standing at the front and leading something, because that's such a specific thing, and it's so church. But there's so much more to youth ministry within the life of a parish church, or even
I completely agree with that. However, there have been occasions when people have done that particular exercise and similar exercises, who've never had the opportunity to think about what they're good at. And I think, when we say these are the kind of people we want, most people might say, oh, but I'm not very good at that, because no one's ever given them a space to really know their gifts and their skills and their talents. And even if they think they're good at something, they've never felt confident to be able to say, actually, yeah, I can do that, or I really feel passionate about that. So when we give people we'd like you to do some people might say, oh, I'd love to do that, but I'm not sure I'm very good at it. And actually what we do is we help to cultivate and nurture those gifts and those talents by bringing them on board. I think youth work can do massive, huge things for people's confidence in leadership.
Yeah. Can I pick up on what you said there? I think the importance of involving people. Whether you're a lead volunteer or an employee, like if you're the person that's heading up stuff, sometimes you can go, like, I know these people trying to do this alongside lots of other commitments, and I want to make stuff as easy as possible, and so I'll try and get as many things done for them, and there's a real lovely kind of heart bit in there, but sometimes we can be guilty of doing all the things and not creating enough space for people to be involved. If somebody turns up and like they turn up to a session, everything's set up and all the resources are prepared, and they just kind of need to show up, float around, and then disappear, people will be like, do I matter in this place? And involving people is really important. If that's kind of, and that's a combination of sharing out sort of the different responsibilities, but also then again like recognizing people's giftings, and sort of like, if you've got somebody who's like great at music, going, hey, do you want to lead a music evening or something, and creating those opportunities for people to be involved, because it's not your youth ministry, like it's God's ministry, it's the church's ministry, and so it's really important there's collective ownership of that and collective involvement, rather than it all just being one person sorting out for everybody else.
Brilliant. How do we've talked a lot about kind of how to bring together a team, how getting the best out of people. Sometimes, like, I've been involved in some youth ministry where some people have left, and then that's really just killed the youth ministry or harmed it in such a big way that it's just been really hard to recover from that. How do we kind of build things into how we make our teams and stuff that means we can sustain that for the long term?
I do two things. First thing, treat yourself. I think it's really good to do stuff with your team, like go out for meals and just have a laugh, go 10-pin bowling, or whatever, really. I think making time to socialise together outside of your youth work space, I think, can be really valuable. I've benefited from those times massively in the past, where you just get to know each other on a different level. I think, yeah, so that would be one of my, and the other one is to really make use of evaluation and reflection, the reflective kind of practice in our work, because often we pack up after youth groups so quickly that everyone, is just a quick check rather than everyone okay, and then everyone kind of toddles off home, and they're obviously exhausted because they've worked all day and then they've volunteered in the evening. But I think there's something really important about evaluation at the end of the evening and building on that and listening to each other and picking up the stuff that needs to be followed through and giving people's voice value. Did I hear that right? Am I right to be concerned about that, etc., etc. Those would be two of my things. Shabba.
Brilliant.
I think having fun together and learning together are really valuable things. You're trying to build a little bit of community. Again, that that's why I think involvement stuff is really important. But so, like some places might kind of like build this in, so like every half term we're going to have a training session and a social session or something. But you might not be in that position. People might only be able to manage it like once a year. But if you can spend some time, like doing a little bit of training together to help you think about something, I think that's really valuable in terms of continuing to invest in leaders and build them up, but also to do that together, so there's kind of interaction in that process and people can bounce off each other and again learn about different perspectives from one another amongst the team. But then also having some time together that's purely social, and if your church is in a position to help subsidize that, I think that's great. And I know that might sound a bit sort of scary or something, but actually it's if you want to look at it from a church point of view, it's about sustainability. It's about keeping people going, and so having a meal together or gonna play a round of crazy golf, go crabbing, I don't know, whatever, but doing something as a team together, that you can just have a bit of chill time but build each other up in relationship.
I'd go crabbing with you, Graeme, defo.
Just want to say, has that been like a personal favourite of your group's crabbing?
And it was actually a really traumatic episode because I caught. Actually, this is going to turn really awkward. Let's just move on.
Ben, have you got any tips for sustainability?
I think I would just. One of my big things is sharing responsibility. I guess I've been a lead leader, if you like, a few times in places, and I think one of the things and it's hard because if you've been someone that's built something up and you've led something for a long time, actually stepping away can feel really hard, but it also can feel quite the best way because you're just going to let someone else pick it up. But actually I think sharing responsibility, building confidence, so that learning together, whether that looks like training. Sue's already mentioned the key. There's Youthscape Essentials, which is kind of probably doing some really good stuff, and does character and youth culture and then youth skills. And I think one of the biggest things is building people's confidence, allowing people to own it, pass responsibility on. Like if you see someone who's maybe in a place where they want to take on that and you feel actually they need to be released in that because it's really cool to be part of that, then do it. Don't hold on so tightly to it. And I think that sounds really odd. We can so quickly, our identity can be, well, you're the youth leader, you're the youth worker, you're this, you're that. And I think we probably fall into that generally in the church. But I think one of the biggest things for me is how do we end well? So if you left the church, what legacy do you pass on? Sort of what is the legacy of being involved in that? Is it just in young people or is it actually in leaders? I think one of the biggest things is about as you leave somewhere that stuff carries on, that actually it's seamless. There's no kind of thing, and there's no kind of drop off in that. There's no young people go, well, I'm not going to that because they're not there now. It's very much like massively it's hugely on us if you're kind of leading something to say, actually, how do we do that? So dirty word, I guess, but is succession planning a little bit is just huge. Sounds very businessy, but succession planning in youth ministry is huge. And I think often when we have a worker, it almost is harder because often that's money related. Whereas actually if it's volunteer related and it's based on someone giving their time and sowing into that, that sometimes can be a bit easier. But that's just, I guess I've been a volunteer leader kind of overseeing something for quite a lot, and being able to do that well is quite tricky sometimes. But
doing exit well is really valuable. And like, and it again ties back to role description stuff. You might put in that like, you know, this is for a year and then we'll evaluate it again in a year's time, and you can tie on like a church commissioning service as part of that, and that's where kind of celebrating your volunteers, again, flag it up with the whole church. Maybe that's an opportunity just to, you know, remind people that like volunteers are welcome, but it also kind of gives people an opportunity to step away, so they know that they're not snared in forever and ever. And if you can bless people as they move on, whether they've been there like 12 months, whether they've been there 12 years, then like the models so much good stuff in terms of, like it's been said, it's succession planning. It suggests you've been thinking about this stuff. It also kind of says good stuff to the leaders who are continuing, that they know that kind of if they ever leave, they're not going to have the mafia trying to track them down. Like it says good stuff to the young people about parting ways in a good way. And it also may be that that person then is more likely to come back because they've done something for a season. They go, I'm going to put this down, but then they come back to it at another point. And so like it's so much positive stuff. Like, so yeah, bless people as they go.
Amen.
Really, really good. We've heard about a couple of resources. The key from Susie and Youthscape Essentials. Are there any other resources or anything, any events or anything like that you think would be helpful for people listening to this, watching this, to look at as they're trying to build a youth team?
So there's a Grove booklet. It's one of the really early ones in the youth series, Reaching and Keeping Volunteers. A lot of what we've said today, you'll find it here, but if you want to read it through in your own speed, and with some extra bits in there, then that's worthwhile. And it's only like like $5 or something, and you can get it as a PDF, I think, as well as getting a physical copy. Also, and I mentioned this earlier, but safer recruitment. If you work in a Church of England context, it's really important that you follow safer recruitment when you're recruiting volunteers. It can seem like a bit of a chunky document. It's almost 60 pages long, but not all of those pages are relevant, and it's written in a quite an easy way to follow through layout. It's not super dense, and yeah, there's just some really good guides on things to do and things to avoid. So it is easy to read, and it is worth your time. So please do use that.
And I guess if you're watching this and you're not from a Church of England context, you can probably access that document.
Yeah.
And we would be big advocates of, if you're in a free church, you're part of Elim, you're part of New Frontiers, you're part of the Methodist Church, whoever you're working with, ministering with, wherever you attend, like please do this safely. And hopefully if the Church of England can provide those resources, then do nick them, because as Graeme said, it's really vital that we're looking after young people, and safeguarding, doing that sort of recruiting our team safely is really important. So.
I'd fly a flag for mental health first aid. I think it's really important for us to invest in our leaders and train them up to be people who can easily can identify and help to navigate the early stages of low mental health in young people. I think it's a worthwhile bit of training to offer all volunteers, really. So I would wholly advocate that, and advocate the safeguarding. I think every denomination should have a safer recruitment policy in place anyway, but it is really important. It might feel cumbersome, like Graeme said, but it's so valuable, and it's another way of valuing our volunteers by putting that in place. And that's where you'll find a job description and all that kind of information really helpful, I think. So yeah, there's loads out there. I think, but I think our greatest resource is kind of each other, really, and getting the most out of our individual unique context of youth work that we're in, supporting each other, particularly during this unsteady season, really.
There's some cool podcasts out there as well. Like there's that whole what's it like? Mind the state of youth work. No, that's not right. What is it?
Thank you.
Such a charm,
Brilliant.
Ernie.
He's a wonderful guest. I'm sure we'll have him on again.
You should.
Bad.
Right, I think that is about all we have time for. Thank you very much for sticking with us through some technical difficulties, mostly on my end. So
big
thank
love,
you
Dave.
very
Big love.
much. Oh, thank you. Big thank you to Susie and Graeme for joining us on this episode.
Thank you.
And Ben as well, of course. I don't want to forget Ben.
Also ran.
Yes. And thank you to everyone who joined us live on YouTube. If you'd like to join us live next time and ask some questions and interact with the people that we have on the podcast, do follow us on Instagram at YouthWork State of Mind so you can be kept up to date with when the next episode is going out. Also, we stream live on our YouTube channel called Train, Equip, Inspire, which is for just that. And hopefully this podcast has done some, if not all of those things for you today. So do check out that YouTube channel as well. And if you're watching live, do drop a like and a subscribe. So you, again, future podcast episodes, you'll get notified when they go out as well. And if you have enjoyed the podcast, we'd love to hear about it. So please do leave a review or rate the podcast if your podcast provider has that feature. I know Apple Podcasts do, but there's many others that do that as well. It really does help us reach more people. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Next time out, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be tackling a question: how do we start youth ministry from scratch? And we're looking forward to that one, aren't we, Ben?
We are. It builds. Well, it's like we planned this. It builds really nicely on from each other. So, so we've got a team in place. What are we going to do? Or yeah. So let's. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Who's on that? Are we dropping that here?
Yeah. Feel free to drop the names.
Drop the names. So we have Emma Gaze, who is part of the Elim Limitless Pioneer team. So launching new youth work in different churches in the Northwest across the Elim network. And Martin Saunders, a man who wrote a book called Starting Youth Work from Scratch. Though he was quick to remind me that was like a decade ago, so some of that might change. But no. So we're looking forward to meeting with them. He also works for Youthscape, by the way. I'll make sure I put that bit in. Not just he wrote a book. But yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And yeah, when's that? That's the 31st going out then, isn't it?
Yeah, Monday the 31st of October. We'll be live on YouTube with that. So do join us for that. But until then, it's goodbye. Bye, everyone.